Afternoon. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Friday, Erev Shabbos. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Yehudit in South Carolina, Bella in Florida, Renee in Indiana, Joe in the Inland Empire, Joseph in Massachusetts, Paul in the Great Northwest, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Shandor in the Bronx, Sharon in New Jersey, Gordo in Scotland, Ella's here, Aoife in Florida, Ilanit in Silver Spring, and Marjorie in Georgia. Welcome, everybody. Starting a new Mishna today, Mishna number 3, here in chapter 3 of Tractate Bava Metzia, the 22nd volume of the Talmud. Our daf is Lamed Zayin, page 37. Pick this up a couple paragraphs from the top on 37a. Mishnah number 3. If one said to two people, I robbed one of you of 100 dinars, but I do not know which one of you I took the money from. Or if one said to two people, the father of one of you deposited 100 dinars with me, but I do not know the father of which of you he is. Right? So he owes 100 dinars, either because he robbed and he has confessed and he wants to return the money, or because somebody deposited money with him and he wants to give it back and he knows that it belongs to the son now because the father died, but he's not sure whether it was the father of this guy or the father of that guy. So there's an uncertainty. He knows he owes 100 dinars because he stole it or he received the deposit, but he doesn't know who he owes it to. And so this is because, so what happens? I do not know the father of which of you he is. So what does he do? Then he gives 100 dinars to this person and 100 dinars to that person. He only owes 100, but in order to make sure that the person that it actually belongs to gets it back, then he has to give 100 dinars to both of them. And this is because there is no way to determine which of them is entitled to the money. And he admitted his obligation of his own initiative. Now, the two that are robbed, you could say, well, does one of them know he was robbed and the other one doesn't? Or do both of them say they were robbed? Or do both of them say, I don't know that anything was stolen from me? And so that's why he has to pay off both of them. And then with regard to the father that left a deposit with him and he doesn't know which son he owes it to, right, the sons don't know about this. So the only way to make sure that the money gets back to who it was stolen from or the son whose father deposited is to pay both sons or both possible robbery victims. In the case of two people who deposited money with one person, and this one deposited 100 dinars, and that one deposited 200 dinars. And then they come to collect their deposit, and this one says, my deposit was the 200 dinars. And the other one says, my deposit was the 200 dinars. So they both claim that they made the larger deposit. So in this situation, the bailee gives 100 dinars to this one and 100 dinars to that one, right? There was 300 total. He received 100 dinars as a deposit from one of them and 200 from the other. He doesn't know which one gave him 200 and which one gave him 100. We'll talk more about that when we get to the Gemara. But according to this, at this point, the Mishnah says, so the bailee gives 100 dinars to this one and 100 dinars to that one. And the rest of the money, i.e. the contested 100 dinars, will be placed in a safe place until Elijah comes and prophetically determines the truth. In other words, there's no way to figure it out. We don't want to give it to the wrong guy. And so we just put it in a safe place, and we're going to wait either until, Mashiach comes, right? The Elijah will come just before the Mashiach, the Messiah, comes. And at that point, all these kinds of questions that we humans cannot solve, that's when they'll be solved. And this is a way of saying it's going to go into the safe place indefinitely, right? Until Mashiach comes. And so the point there being, now, of course, one of them could say, you know what, I'm wrong, give it to the other guy. But as long as both of them are claiming that they made the larger deposit, this would be the outcome. Now, that's according to the unattributed opinion. Rabbi Yosei says, if so, what did the swindler lose, right? One of them is lying. Now, maybe one of them is mistaken. But let's assume for a moment that one of them is a swindler. He's lying. He knows he only deposited 100. And the other one knows he deposited 200. But the one who knows, he's out of luck. And the swindler didn't lose anything because he got his 100 back. And he caused the other one who had more money not to get his. So Rabbi Yosei says, if so, what did the swindler lose? He lost nothing by claiming the 100 dinars that belongs to another. And he has no incentive to admit the truth. So what Rabbi Yosei would say is rather the entire deposit will be placed in a safe place until Elijah comes, as his fraud will cause him to lose even the 100 dinars that he deposited. Perhaps he will be discouraged from making a fraudulent claim. And likewise, if two people deposited two vessels, one worth 100 dinars and one worth 1,000 dinars, and this one says the expensive vessel is mine, and that one says the expensive vessel is mine. So the bailee gives the small vessel to one of them, and from the proceeds of the sale of the large vessel, he gives the value of the small vessel to the other, and the rest of the money is placed in a safe place until Elijah comes. And Rabbi Yosei said, if so, what did the swindler lose? Rather, the entire deposit, i.e. both vessels, are placed in a safe place until Elijah comes, or one of them admits to the deceit. That's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara. From the fact that the Mishnah teaches that if the bailee does not know whom he robbed, he gives 100 dinars to this one and 100 dinars to that one. So apparently in cases of uncertainty, we expropriate property and return it to those claiming it. And we do not say, establish the money in the possession of the owner. In this case, the bailee is currently in possession of the money, but the money is not left in his possession, right? He doesn't know who he owes it to. So when we say as a general matter of monetary law in Jewish law, that we establish property in the possession of its owner. What that means is whoever's got it now has, the presumptive claim to it. If somebody wants to get it from him, he has to make the case, right? So in other words, what we should say is, well, let's say the case of not the robber, because he got the money through sin, but the one who received the deposit from a father, and he doesn't know whose father it is. It's one of these two young men. So what he should say is, I received a deposit from one of your fathers. I don't know which. So the two of you should try to figure out who deposited money with me and bring me the evidence, and then I'll give you the money back. But we don't say that, right? So we don't say that leave the money where it is until somebody presents evidence to prove that it should change hands. Rather, in this case, because he's a bailee of a deposit, it's on him to figure out who to give it to. And if he can't figure out between two people, he has to pay both of them, right? So that's the surprise that the Gemara is commenting on. And so the Gemara will say, and raise a contradiction from the continuation of our Mishnah. In the case of two people who deposited money with one person, and this one deposited 100 dinars, and that one deposited 200 dinars, and when they come to collect their deposit, this one says, I had the 200 dinars, and the other one says, no, I had the 200 dinars. So in this case, the bailee gives 100 to this one and 100 to that one, and the rest of the money is placed in a safe place until Elijah comes and prophetically determines the truth. So the sages said to the one who raised the contradiction, meaning here we don't remove the money from the bailee. He's going to hold on to it until one of them can prove that the other one is lying, or the one admits that he's lying, but we don't remove the money from him. So the sages said to the one who just raised this contradiction in the Gemara, are you raising a contradiction between the law stated in the case of a deposit and the law stated in the case of a robbery? In the case of a robbery, where one transgressed a prohibition, the sages penalized him and ruled that he must pay both possible robbery victims. In the case of a deposit, where he did not transgress a prohibition, the sages did not penalize him. Now that's in the case where we don't know who deposited 100 dinars and who deposited 200 dinars. But in the first clause of our Mishnah, there was also a deposit, right? Where a father deposited, and we don't know whose father he was. So now the Gemara continues, and they raised a contradiction between the law stated in the case of a deposit and the law stated in the case of a deposit. And they also raised a contradiction between the law of a robbery and the law of a robbery. There is a contradiction between the law in the case of a deposit and the law of a deposit, as it is taught in the first clause of the Mishnah. Or if one said to two people, the father of one of you deposited 100 dinars with me, but I do not know the father of which you he is. So here the bailee is told, give 100 dinars to this person and 100 dinars to that person. So that seems like we do remove, and we not only remove it from the bailee, but we make him pay twice. Even though, like why? It's the case of a deposit. It's not the case of a robbery. So let's see what the Gemara says. So the Gemara, I'm sorry, hold on a second. They give 100 dinars to each of them. So the Gemara raises a contradiction from the continuation of the Mishnah cited above. In the case of two people who deposited money with one person, the contested sum is placed in a safe place until Elijah comes. Right, so the second clause, we don't, we just give what we know is uncontested, and he holds what is contested. But in the first clause, what is contested, what is uncertain, right? He's going to end up paying twice to each of the possible sons of the father who made the deposit. So and that's the contradiction. So Rava said, in the first clause of the Mishnah, in the case where the bailee receives money from the father of one person, he becomes like one with whom they deposited sums of money in two separate bundles, as the bailee should have been discerning with regard to who gave him the money. His failure to know who gave him the money so that he could then go to his son and say, this is your father, your father deposited this money with me, right? In other words, what's happening here is not that the bailee is a robber, like in the first situation, but rather that the bailee was negligent. He doesn't know who gave him the money. That's negligence on his part, and that's why he's going to have to end up paying twice. His failure to know constitutes negligence, and therefore he pays the sum to both claimants. In the latter clause of the Mishnah, in the case where he receives money from two people, he becomes like one with whom they deposited sums of money in one bundle, as there is no expectation that he should have been discerning. Right? So later they're going to make this a little bit clearer about bundles. But basically, if I'm going to be the bailee and you're going to deposit money with me, right? So you give me 100 dinars and Reuven gives me 200 dinars. So it's on me to know that you gave me 100 dinars and that Reuven gave me 200. And later when you come and say, I gave you 200 dinars, Sal, I'll have a logbook, a record, a receipt, etc. I will know who gave me what. But if you and Reuven come to me together and you say, Sal, here's a money pouch. Hold on to this pouch for us. We both have money in it. Just hold on to the pouch. So all I need to know is how much money's in the pouch. How the two of you are going to divide it, that's not my business. I don't need to know that you had 100 dinars in the pouch and Reuven had 200 dinars in the pouch. I was simply asked to watch a pouch with 300 dinars in it. So that's when two people put money in one bundle, And that's distinguished from when two people bring each one with a bundle and I receive two separate bundles. So that's what we're talking about. So again, Rav is said in the first clause of the Mishnah, in the case where the bailee receives the money from the father of one person, he becomes like one who received two separate bundles, and he should have known who gave him what. And his failure to do so is negligence. But in the latter clause of the Mishnah, where he receives money from two people, he becomes like one with whom they deposited sums of money in one bundle, as there is no expectation that he should have been discerning who put what inside the bundle. And it is a case where they both deposited their money together at one time, and the bailee says to them, if you yourselves were not suspicious of each other, should I be suspicious? Therefore, he is required to pay them only the sum that they can prove is theirs, and the rest will be kept in a safe place until one of them admits that he was lying or Elijah comes. And they raised a contradiction between the law of robbery and the law of robbery, as stated in two different places. And that's like this. It is taught here in our Mishnah, if one said to two people, I robbed one of you of 100 dinars, but I do not know from which of you I took the money. Or if one said to two people, the father of you deposited 100 dinars with me, but I do not know the father of which of you he is. So he gives the 100 dinars to this person and to that person. So in terms of the robbery, I don't know which of you I robbed, so I have to pay both of them. And now we're going to look at a Mishnah that we encountered in Tractate Yevamos many moons ago on page 118b. So if one robbed one of 5 people, and the robber does not know which of them he robbed, and this one says he robbed me, and that one says he robbed me. So then the robber places the stolen item between them and withdraws. This is the statement of Rabbi Tarfon. Apparently, contrary to the Mishnah, we do not expropriate money due to an uncertainty and return it to those claiming it. Instead, we say, establish the money in the possession of the owner. Right? So according to that Mishnah in Yevamos, it seems like if you don't know who you robbed and two people say, I'm the one who was robbed, so you take the amount of money that you know you robbed and you just put it there. And then they can fight about it. And that's obviously a contradiction between our Mishnah, where it says that if you know you robbed somebody, but you don't know who you robbed, then you have to pay both of them. Right? So the Gemara asks, and from where is it known that the Mishnah here is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Tarfon? Perhaps our Mishnah here is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, and that's why there's no contradiction, because that Mishnah is like Rabbi Tarfon, but maybe our Mishnah here is like Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva holds that the robber must pay each of the 5 possible victims, and then there's no contradiction at all. So the Gemara answers, it is known that the Mishnah here is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Tarfon, as it is taught in a baraisa concerning the law taught in that Mishnah in Tractate Yevamos, that Rabbi Tarfon concedes that in a case where a robber says to two people, I robbed one of you of 100 dinars, but I do not know which of you it was, he gives 100 dinars to this person and he gives 100 dinars to that person, as he has already admitted his obligation on his own. So the contradiction between this Mishnah and that Mishnah remains, particularly since we're saying that both Mishnahs are in agreement with Rabbi Tarfon. So the Gemara explains, there in the Mishnah where one robbed one of 5 people of money, it is referring to a case where the claimants demand payment from him. He is required to pay them only 100 dinars, as the burden of proof rests upon the claimant. By contrast, here, i.e. in this Mishnah, the statement of Rabbi Tarfon in the Baraisa is referring to a case where the robber comes to fulfill his obligation to heaven, right? We're coming out with a different outcome, that he's going to pay all of them who might be the victims, because he wants to atone for his sin of robbery, and he wants to be sure that he refunded what he stole to the actual victim. Now that there's other people coming up and claiming that they're the victim, he's in a tough spot in order to make his atonement, and the only way to be sure that the actual victim is reimbursed is to pay all of them. But in terms of the letter of the law, once multiple people say that they were the ones who got robbed, so some of them are liars, and only one of them is the actual victim. So what does he do? He puts the money in front of them, and then they have to bring evidence. The one who is actually the victim can somehow show that he was robbed, maybe brings witnesses, something, and then he can get that money. But the outcome is different because putting the money between the claimants, that's the letter of the law. Actually paying out the amount that was stolen multiple times to everyone who claims that they're the victim, that's going way beyond the letter of the law, and it's only because this robber has made a full atonement and wants to fulfill his obligation to heaven, which is, a greater, much more stringent if he wants to be sure that he's absolutely done every right thing. That's going beyond the letter of the law. Now, only by returning the money to the person he robbed can he fully atone for his transgression. Therefore, he goes beyond the legal requirements and pays both claimants. And the Gemara notes, and the language of this Mishna is also precise, as the Tana teaches, because he admitted his obligation of his own initiative. And the Gemara affirms, learn from the wording of the Mishnah that this is the explanation of the Mishnah. Our Mishnah teaches you how to make a full atonement. It's going beyond the legal requirement. Now, with regard to returning stolen money, the master said, there it is referring to a case where the claimants demand payment from him. And the Gemara asks, and the other person, the thief, what does he claim in response? And Rav Yehuda says that Rav says the other person is silent and he does not know to whom he owes the money. So Rav Matana says that Rav says the other person screams and says to each of the claimants, I do not recognize you and I find no basis for your claim. So the Gemara comments, the one who says that the other screams holds that he need not return the money to each of them if he is screaming that he does not accept their claims. But a reaction of silence is tantamount to admission that the demands of the claimants are legitimate. And the one who says that the other is silent holds that the silence here is not tantamount to admission, as the robber could say to him, the fact that I was silent to each and every one of the claimants is because I said, perhaps this is he, the robbery victim. But I do not admit that I owe money to more than one person. He only robbed one person. He's not going to confess that he robbed 5 people. We are on 37b now. The master said, the robber places the stolen item between them and withdraws from them, right? So that's according to Rabbi Tarfon in Yevamos. There, Rabbi Kiva disagreed and says, you have to pay each of them. Now, was Rabbi Kiva saying that's the halakhic requirement, or that's what you have to do in order to satisfy your obligation before heaven? Stay tuned. So now, just back to that Yevamos Mishnah, the robber places the stolen item between them and withdraws. So the Gemara challenges, and all of them take it and go, possibly resulting in the robbery victim losing his property. But doesn't Rabbi Abba Bar Zafta say that Rav says concerning found items, in any case of uncertainty, where the placement of a found item was deliberate, and where the placement of the found item was deliberate, the finder may not take the item ab initio, and if he took it, he should not return it to one who claims ownership without conclusive proof. So here too, the robber should keep the money until one of the claimants provides conclusive proof that the money is his. Why is he placing it before them and saying to them, you guys fight it out? Why doesn't he say, you guys prove to me who was robbed and I'll give it to him? And Rav Safra says the Baraisa means, and the robber should place it in his possession or before the court. When we say place it before them, that is what it means, right? That they have to make a claim and prove it, or the robber who wants to, return the money gives it to the court, and then the court is going to accept claims, based on evidence. So Abaye said to Rava, in disputing Rabbi Tarfon's opinion with regard to one who robbed money from one of 5 people, did Rabbi Kiva say, This is not the way to spare him from transgression. He is not considered to have returned the stolen item until he pays the value of the stolen item to each and every one of the 5. So apparently, in his opinion, in Rabbi Akiva's opinion, in cases of uncertainty, we expropriate property and return it to those claiming it, and we do not say establish the money in possession of the owner. Right? So now apparently we're saying that no, Rabbi Akiva is not saying we're going beyond the legal requirement just to satisfy your obligation to heaven, but rather, since he was a robber, in order to discourage robbery, we make it known that if multiple claimants appear and you don't know who you robbed, you're going to have to pay all of them, right? Further discouragement of people to rob. So the Gemara now raises a contradiction from a different Mishnah, Tractate Bava Basra, page 158b. A house collapsed on a person and on his mother, and it is unclear which of them died first. So the son's heirs say the mother died first, and her property was inherited by her son, and then he died, and therefore the heirs of the son now inherit the property of both the mother and the son. But the mother's heirs say, right, so she had other heirs besides this son. The mother's heirs say the son died first, and therefore the mother's heirs should inherit all her property. In this case, both these Tanaim, both Beis Shammai and those, Beis Hillel, agree that they should divide the disputed property, although they disagree in similar cases, right? Because we don't know who died first. The house collapsed, and we cannot know who died first. Probably one of them died, even moments before the other. It was not exactly the same moment. And depending on who died first, it's going to change the path of the inheritance, right? So, and that's going to affect these other heirs, right? The son's heirs and the mother's heirs, right? The mother may has multiple sons. The heirs of the son are not his brothers, right? They are his sons. So if the son died first, right? I just want to make sure I'm saying this correct. Right, the mother's heirs say that the son died first, right? So therefore, whatever goes from the mother, what is inherited by the mother is going to be divided by that son and other sons, other heirs, right? But if the son died first, but if the mother died first, then her property was inherited by the son, right, among these other brothers, and then that gets passed through to his heirs. Now, Rava said because if the son died first and then the mother dies, then when the mother dies, her property goes only to her heirs and not to the you don't say it passes to her son and then to his sons, because he wasn't alive at the time that she died. So it just only goes to living heirs. Okay. And so both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that in this case, because we don't know who died first, all the interested parties divide the disputed property, even though Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagree in similar cases, but they concede in this case. And Rabbi Akiva said, I concede in this case that the property retains its previous ownership status. So apparently Rabbi Akiva himself holds that property is not removed from one's possession in cases of uncertainty. In cases of uncertainty, we leave it where it is, and then the people who are claiming it, have to bring evidence, and if they can't bring evidence, maybe we divide among the claimants, but we don't do that until there's reason to. So Rava said to Abaye, there in the case where the house collapsed, it is where there is an uncertain claim and an uncertain claim, as neither party knows who died first when that house collapsed. By contrast, in a case where one robbed money from one of 5 people, it is a case where there is a certain claim, somebody was robbed, and an uncertain claim, as the robber does not know from whom he robbed the money. But the victim's claims are based on certainty. The actual victim is certain. So the Gemara challenges, but in the Mishnah here, where one said to 2 people, I robbed one of you of 100 dinars, but I do not know which of you I took the money from. It is a case where there is an uncertain claim and an uncertain claim. And it is taught, he gives 100 dinars to this person and to that person. And the Gemara asks, and from where is it known that the Mishnah here is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva? And the Gemara answers, well, this is known as it is taught in the Baraisa concerning the law taught in that Mishnah in Yevamos, that Rabbi Tarfon concedes that in a case where one says to two people, I robbed one of you of 100 dinars and I do not know which of you I robbed the money from, the robber gives 100 dinars to each of them. So to whom does Rabbi Tarfon concede on this? Is it not to Rabbi Akiva, who is his usual disputant? And the Gemara asks, and from where is it known that in the Mishnah, it is a case where there is an uncertain claim and an uncertain claim? Perhaps the victims are certain that they were robbed. And the Gemara answers, well, this is unlikely for several reasons. One, it is not taught in the Mishnah that they demand payment from him. And furthermore, didn't Rabbi Chia teach in a Baraisa that the Mishnah is referring to a case where this party says, I do not know, and that party says, I do not know? Right? The ones who were robbed, they don't know that they were robbed. They're saying, okay, you owe it to one of us. I didn't know that I was robbed. And the other one says, I didn't know that I was robbed. They're not both making claims. So the Gemara resolves the contradiction between the statements of Rabbi Akiva. Didn't we establish the Mishnah as referring to a case in which the robber is coming to fulfill his obligation to heaven? He's going beyond the letter of the law. Therefore, the robber gives 100 dinars to each, although he has no legal obligation to do so because they made uncertain claims. Ravina said to Rav Ashi, and did Rava say that in every case where the deposits are given in two separate bundles, that the bailee should have been discerning with regard to the identity of the ones giving him the deposits? Yeah, okay. But didn't Rava say, and some say it was Rav Papa who said, everyone concedes, in the case of two people who deposited animals with a shepherd, that if each claims that his deposit included a greater number of animals than that of the other, that the shepherd places the animals among them and says, okay, here are the animals. You guys have competing claims. You work it out. Sounds just like Rabbi Tarfon's view of what to do when somebody robs one of five people and doesn't know which. Rav Ashi said to Ravina, there it is referring to a case where the shepherds deposited animals in the shepherd's flock without his knowledge. Clearly there is no expectation that the shepherd will discern how many animals belong to each party. And likewise, in the case of two people who deposited two vessels, one worth 100 dinars and one worth 1,000 dinars, and each of the claimants claims that the expensive vessel is his, the bailee gives the small vessel to one of them, and the proceeds of the sale of the large vessel, from that he gives the value of the small vessel to the other, and the rest of the money is placed in a safe place until Elijah comes. And the Gemara comments, and it is necessary for the Tan of our Mishnah to cite both the case of money and the case of vessels. And the reason is, and I'm almost done, so questions or comments, please get them in now. And the reason is that if the Tan of our Mishnah had taught us this first case with regard to money alone, one would conclude that it is in this case that the rabbis say that each party receives 100 dinars and 100 dinars is kept in a safe place, because in this case there is no loss. But in that case of the vessels, where there is the loss of a large vessel, as it must be broken or sold in order to pay the value of the small vessel to the other party, say that they would concede to Rabbi Yosef that both vessels are kept in a safe place and nobody gets acclaimed in order to discourage the swindler from making the lie. So even the one with the smaller deposit doesn't get it back. And had the dispute been stated only in that case of vessels, one would conclude that it is in that case that Rabbi Yosef said that both vessels are kept in a safe place. But in this case of money, say that he concedes to the rabbis. Therefore, it is necessary to cite both cases. And the Gemara asks, and now we're at the top of 38a, and we're going to finish this discussion of Mishnah number 3. The Gemara asks, but isn't the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Yosef, as he stated in the Mishnah, due to the loss of the fraud? It is not due to the fact that the vessel would not remain intact. Consequently, there is no reason to believe that Rabbi Yosef would concede to the rabbis in the instance where money was deposited. Rather, both of the cases are necessary according to the rabbis, and although the first case could have been inferred from the second case, the Tana teaches the Mishnah employing the style of not only this, but also that, i.e. the Mishnah began with an obvious example and continued with a more novel one. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 3. Right, so what did we really learn is that when there is uncertainty, we leave the money where it is with the bailee or even with the robber who robbed, or perhaps we move it to the court, and the ones who are claiming, right, who have competing claims on the money, they have to come forward and prove their case. However, if somebody wants to go beyond the letter of the law to make sure he's done the right thing, especially a bailee who thinks he should have known who he owes the money to, or a robber who should have known who he robbed from, then he pays everybody off, right? He has to pay multiple times, and then he can be sure that whoever he actually took from or whoever the money actually belonged to has received it back, and then he can say, okay, I am pure before heaven. I know I've done the right thing. I've made a full atonement, but we don't require that. Rather, the general principle is that in cases of uncertainty, the money stays where it is until one of the claimants can prove his case. And if no one can prove the case and no one is going to admit that they lied, then the money's going to remain in that safe place until Elijah comes. Okay, I'm seeing just one question from Tom. Putting the money between them and withdrawing is unfair to the actual victim. Right, and what is it? Does it actually mean that they're fighting, or does it mean that they have to state the case, right? They have to make the case. Now, that is tough on the victim. It's bad enough he was robbed, and now he has to prove that he was robbed. It's very interesting how even when they agree on the outcome, they still try to clarify the correct way to reach it. The process is just as important as the outcome. Just so, Tom. Very good. And Tom also asked, does he have to pay the extra 1/5 to everyone? So in the case of a deposit, right, where you are swearing that you didn't, so which is the extra 1/5, right? I think that's a deposit, and one swore falsely, and then he admits it. The robber who admits that he robbed, I think doesn't have the, does he have the penalty payment of the extra 1/5? I'm not sure. But they didn't mention the 1/5, so I would think, no, it's not required. And it must be because he seeks of his own admission, of his own volition to make the atonement, not somebody who was caught and has to pay the extra. That's my sense of this, right? I think. Not 100% sure. Okay, that's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night after Shabbos ends. So I think Shabbos is ending about 8. I'm going to do my best to get on the air by 8:30 p.m. Pacific. Then I'm scheduled to get on a red eye Saturday night, and I'm going to go visit my father Sunday to Wednesday. As of now, I'm planning to keep teaching from my father's house, even though I don't, have this equipment there. But I'm going to try to bring, the camera and a microphone and my Gemara, and keep the class going while I'm away. So that's the plan. As of now, no change. I'll keep teaching at the regular time every day. But if something changes, I'll put a post on the Facebook.